Hello, everybody. Welcome back to another edition of the Director's Cut. I am Drew Fry, hosting today alongside Jackson Kinney. And of course, we are here to talk IU football. And we have IUSTV's two great football reporters for this upcoming season. We have Haley Jordan and Jevan McCoskey. Welcome to the show, and we're so glad to have you.
Hello. Thanks for the invite.
And no
Of
problem.
course.
It's
Yeah,
a full room this time. We've never had more than three people at a time. So I'm glad to have you both on, Drew, too. I guess kind of just if you want to get right into it, I guess the biggest news of this week is the new schedule for IU football. So if either of you want to go through that, take us through that real quick.
Hey, you can go ahead. You start it.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. Taking a look at the schedule, it can be very intimidating, especially if you compare it to past schedules, because a lot of times in the past, you have those easier non-conference games. That's basically a guaranteed win. But now when you start with Wisconsin on September 4th and you end with Purdue on November 21st and everything in between, you're like, ooh, we have to start winning these games from day one. There is going to be no time to figure things out with the first couple of games, and it's going to be extremely interesting to see who is going to step up, because Tom Allen has said he has a full list of guys he expects to step up, and this schedule is not easy.
Right. You go ahead, Jevan.
Well, if you look at those first four games, Wisconsin, Penn State, Illinois, Ohio State, we might walk out 1-3, before our bye week.
Uh-huh.
So it's going to be super, super tough. And like you said, from Wisconsin all the way down to Purdue, winning is going to be a priority right out of the gate. You have to win. Seemingly, you want to try to win every game, obviously. But, I mean, if we look to have a successful season like we did last year, it's going to be pretty hard, pretty tough.
Right, and just to go over the schedule real quick, the 10-game conference only, Wisconsin starting out at Wisconsin, as Haley mentioned, and then as Jevan said, the next three are Penn State, Illinois. Those two are at home, Ohio State on the road. So that first four-game stretch is insane.
That's tough.
And then it doesn't get any easier for the team as they go to Minnesota after Ohio State. They've got two at home after that against Michigan and Maryland. Then they go to New Jersey to face Rutgers on Halloween night. And then they have to go to Michigan State. And they wrap it all up against Purdue in Bloomington. And then the Big Ten championship game, which who knows if that's actually going to happen. Who knows if we get all –
what's going to happen.
Who knows if they get all 10 games in this season.
Yeah.
But – we're just going to go ahead and operate under the way that we think they are.
Yeah.
Can I just say real quick? Oh, sorry, Drew. You go first.
Oh, I was going to say something I was looking at. I remember when the original 2020 schedule came out, and there were talks that, after the opening game against Wisconsin, you have the three non-conference games, typically against weaker teams, one of them being against UConn, who their football program has now been cut altogether. So, that game is not getting rescheduled.
Mm-hmm.
And then with a little bit of the easier play in the Big Ten coming up after that, there's talks that IU might start 6 or 7-1 on the season. And now, Illinois is not an easy team by any means, but if IU wins that Illinois game, that's still the Hoosiers are still looking at maybe a 1-5 start. And yes, the schedule becomes a little easier near the end. But what I'm wondering is if you start out this could be one of the most talented IU teams that the Hoosiers have seen in 25 years. But if you start out getting beat by Wisconsin and Ohio State and Michigan and Minnesota, that's got to knock the wind out of you, right?
Yeah, there's only so much loss you can take. And the first 6 games on this schedule are bowl teams that last year won a combined 60 games in 2019. So if you look at that stat alone, it's kind of intimidating. And if you lose back-to-back, consecutively, yeah, like what you said, Drew, it could knock the wind out of you. But the thing is, I think this team, they have a lot of resilience. And especially when you have guys like Walt Phillier on the team, Mike Penix, these are hype men. They are going to hype those guys up, and they don't want to lose. They don't want to lose.
Right, and so what I'm hearing is my 10-win Indiana I have up behind me is not looking incredible.
Well, I will say, speaking to Mike Penix, Walt Phillier, and Stevie Scott, they all seem like, they love the new schedule. They love that it presents an opportunity to, really determine how prevalent IU is within the Big Ten. They all see it as an opportunity, and they're willing to take that opportunity.
I was about to say, because regardless, if you just put the fears of the actual real world behind you for a few seconds and just focus on the schedule as a football player on this team, it is a great opportunity, because if you go 3-3 through the first 6 games, that's a lot of that is a lot of respect for this Indiana program against that run of the gauntlet. So I mean, 3-3, 4-2, that would be one of the best stretches of games in this program's history.
Yeah, that's true. And something that I've noticed from just being around last year's team, and I'm sure this year's team even more so, is, I mean, I can sit here and talk about, at Wisconsin and facing Ohio State, and these are going to be losses, but that team doesn't look at it that way at all. I remember talking to one of the players last year who's just like, all right, how many losses do we have right now? Well, that's how many we're going to finish with. And that was like 3 games into the season. Like, they expect to win every single game. And so, like, yeah, from an outside perspective, I'm like, Ohio State's pretty good. But to them, that's just another team. And so, yeah, I think you're completely right, Jackson. If they go out and pick up a couple of these games, it doesn't matter what the record's going to be. If you beat Penn State, you're on the national stage.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and you have to realize that Tom Allen and both Nick Sheridan have said we're taking this one day at a time. And really that statement could not be more true, especially in the times right now. It seriously is one game at a time, because you never know when the health department's going to step in and say you're done, football's over. So literally that just goes back to both of your points of how, yeah, they have to think that they are going to win every single game, because they don't know when it's going to be their last this season. And we can only hope for the best.
That's a good point, because I turned on Big Ten Network the other day, and Tom Allen was there, and he said, we're just going to go and not look too far into the future, which out of any coach, athlete, I've never heard a quote like that, because they're always, we're not looking too far ahead, but we've got it planned in the future. But he goes, we're just going to take it a day at a time, not going to even think about it. It's like, okay, interesting. But, if anybody's going to do it, I trust Tom Allen to do it. Mm-hmm. But I did want to bring up the Penn State game, because they were a defensive stop away from beating Penn State in Happy Valley last year. And they've got them coming to Bloomington. I feel like that, Drew, like you said, they're on the national stage if they beat them. I feel like that's their first real opportunity to say, okay, we're not a pushover in this conference anymore. And, like, what do you guys think about that?
Go ahead, Haley.
I don't have a comment on that one.
Yeah, well, I'll jump out there and I'll say, I mean, any game that they have is an opportunity. I mean, we can look at Illinois last season. I mean, one of the reasons they made it to a bowl game was because they jumped out early and beat Wisconsin, and first game of the season, especially now, you have no idea who is ready for what and which teams look whatever way. So, I mean, if IU goes out and challenges Wisconsin, that could already be a statement. The Penn State game last year, that was a very interesting game, because I feel like IU sort of caught Penn State off guard, because at that point, I mean, it was an IU team that had never challenged Penn State, in years, and Penn State was just about to face Ohio State at home. I think it was sort of a trap game. And of course the Nittany Lions stepped up. But again, the Hoosiers are improving. So I think every game is sort of an opportunity. I would be shocked if IU gives Ohio State a run for their money. But other than that, I don't think any game is out of the question. Now, that's not to say that they're going to win all of the rest of the games, because Michigan's insanely talented, as is Penn State, as is Wisconsin and Minnesota. But I don't think there's very many that are just completely – I don't think the Hoosiers are at a point anymore where they're completely outmanned, which years past, that was a scenario that they had to face.
Well, I think you get to that Penn State game and, let's say IU comes out on top. That is the ultimate confidence booster rolling into the rest of the season. Yeah. And like you said, every single game is another opportunity for IU to prove themselves. And I think if they get that win against Penn State, rolling into the rest of the season, they can feel it. They will feel like, if they already don't, which I assume they do, that they can beat anybody on their schedule. So I think that Penn State game is pretty important.
All right, I'm just looking at the schedule. That 2-week stretch against Maryland and Rutgers, no disrespect to them, but that's going to feel so refreshing for IU.
Yeah.
That's what all the articles are saying. They're like, okay, there's going to be a 2-week period where Indiana football feels like they're on fire and on top of the world. And you know what? There's nothing wrong with that. There is
Yeah.
nothing wrong with getting a confidence booster, even though it's not from, a big blow like Penn State. But to get 2 wins are 2 wins, especially when you're only playing games.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah. But of course, all of this, unfortunately, dependent on the health of the team. And originally, I mean, you'd say that in the past, that might be like, oh, how is Michael Penix's shoulder? Oh, how is Stevie Scott's ankle? But now it's about, the coronavirus, which teams are able to stay healthy. And we've already seen situations of one of the IU football players, Brent Feeney, who ended up, he's got really sick. And of course, his mother had a post on Facebook about Brady Feeney, by the way, about, heart problems that he's developing. And of course, it's incredibly serious all the way around. But yeah, I mean, what do you think this team, what kind of a hit do you think that's going to take to the locker room? I mean, when you're in there, you want to be as close to your teammates as possible. You want to celebrate. And I mean, you've now got this virus looming over your head, which, I mean, the Hoosiers have now seen firsthand what it can do to them and their teammates.
Take this one. So as far as I know, practices have been just walkthroughs. There's been lots of sleds. There's been lots of dummies, a lot of talk, no tackling. They had a helmets only practice today, I believe. And I don't know, I'm unaware of when they can actually start having physical contact with each other. But as of right now, that's not been the case. It's just been walkthroughs. But Tom Allen said that, and Nick Sheridan said, because they've had so much time to communicate and talk about it, their first practice is probably going to be more effective because they've had time to think about it. And I was like, okay, I never thought of it that way. They're planning mentally more so than physically. And I actually think that's going to be a really good thing for the team.
Right.
Yeah,
And
I second everything she says on that one.
I feel like with just having only walkthroughs, especially now at this point, a lot of teams in the summer would usually be focusing on getting them physically ready. I feel like this will work out better for teams having them mentally ready, knowing the playbook better, knowing just every little detail before halfway through August is going to be a huge advantage. And it's not just Indiana, because a lot of teams are doing that same thing, but I think it's going to make the quality of the game we get to see a lot better too, because players are going to have more time to learn it. So I think maybe the overall product goes up and we get to see better football. But another interesting thing for practice that I've seen in the pictures is they've got the mask situation going on in the helmets now. It's not a uniform thing because some players have, I like Jack Tuttle had a repurposed visor in the mouth part of his face mask. Some players have cloth. It's different for everyone, but that's just a little interesting thing where you look back at the pictures from this year and you see all the masks. And it's just like, oh, okay, that's the COVID year. It's just really interesting to see from practice so far.
Those are required in the weight room as well. And a couple of the guys have said, oh man, I'm breaking out. I'm sweating in this mask and it's not ideal. But Stevie Scott, he said earlier today that although the masks are a barrier, it's difficult to control your breathing. It's not the worst thing in the world. And Wops even said that it doesn't really make a difference. And so did Mike Penix. He was like, we wear these sometimes in the winter to keep warm. Basically, that's what's happening again. It's just all about, it's different. It's not necessarily bad. It's not good or ideal. It's just different. And it's going to help prevent the spread of COVID so they can play.
All right. And that's really important when they've already had to shut down practices at one point earlier in the summer, the voluntary workouts. But yeah, Drew, you mentioned Brady Feeney. That's what you want to avoid. And now that they have an example, I mean, obviously they didn't need it, but now they can see, okay, this is what can happen. We're going to take this more seriously. So I feel like the team, I don't expect them to have any more problems.
Yeah. Something that's interested me, though, and obviously none of us are going to have like a set answer for this, but something that I guess everyone's just going to see is, unlike professional sports, we've seen a lot of professional sports. I mean, hockey and basketball are playing in a bubble. MLB, after a few outbreaks amongst teams, they're now basically locked down in their hotels. On college campuses, you can't do that. These are student athletes. They will be going to class, They're going to be walking through campus along with the other 44,000 students in Bloomington. So I think it's going to be really interesting to see how the team is able to handle not only working, trying to protect their own players, but having to respond to the environment of the entire town.
That's where self-control comes in. You can't control a bunch of 20-something guys on a college campus. College are your years for fun, no matter if you're an athlete or just a regular student. And those guys are for sure involved in other extracurriculars, fraternities, a couple extra organizations, like you said, Drew, just class in general. Some of them, like not all classes are online, some of them are in person. And I think it's just going to take an immense amount of self-discipline for these guys to realize I'll hang out with my team members and that's going to be it. Because if not, I could potentially jeopardize my health. I could jeopardize everybody else's health and be responsible for shutting the 2020 Indiana football season down. And who wants that weight on their back?
Right. You don't want to go down in memory as the guy who went out to a party and then brought back the virus to the entire team, and then you can't go play the big game in Columbus against Ohio State, or you can't host Michigan for the big Saturday afternoon game on TV. You don't want to be that guy to go down in history.
No, absolutely not. Absolutely not.
Well, a fun note on that, actually, this is not fun at all. I want to correct that. But the University of Louisville, they recently had to shut down a lot of practices. 3 of the men's soccer players have been dismissed from the program after they organized a party, which led to outbreaks amongst the men's soccer team, the women's soccer team, the field hockey team, and the volleyball team. So all of those practices have been shut down. And I mean, not only those 3 players have been dismissed from the team, they already had a history of violations according to the coach, which is why they've been dismissed. But that's now not only, if that happened in the middle of the season, that's not only the men's soccer season that's in jeopardy, but that's 4 different sports.
Knocks out every team possible. Wow, that I didn't know they were dismissed. That is huge.
Yeah.
And Coach Allen said we didn't really know what he meant by this, but he said if people were being careless, if his guys were being careless, there would be consequences. Don't quite know what that means, but I guess we'll see if that were to happen.
Hopefully we don't have to see. Hopefully we don't have to see.
Exactly.
But we don't have to see. Exactly. We hope
I know
not.
that athletes hang out cross sport here too, so
Of course.
I mean, I feel like that's worst case scenario. And that a lot of other places too. But I feel like worst case scenario is a football player goes to a party, gives the football team the virus, and then a volleyball player was there, or a men's soccer player was there. Or
you would think everyone would just have like the whereabouts to just because they want to play. I mean, it's not like any athlete comes to a college and not want to play.
And
that's go ahead.
To me, that's what Coach Allen has to say. That's what all of the coaches have to say to their athletes and their programs is, look, I get it. You want to go out and party with your friends, but you came here to play, so do whatever you can to play. I feel like that should be the only thing they have to say to their athletes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But obviously at Louisville, that didn't work out. So who knows?
Yeah, and I mean, you like to believe that everyone else can have like their own restraint, but not only did those 3 soccer players organize this event, but field hockey players and volleyball players and women's soccer players and other men's soccer players, they all attended.
Exactly. Yeah. They're just as responsible. They went knowing there's going to be a ton of people there.
Right. And luckily this happens before the season, and hopefully things are able to calm down and, lesson learned. But it is scary, and to think that, I mean, entire seasons could be shut down. And that's one of the things the Big Ten, in releasing their schedule, said there's a lot of flexibility within the schedule. So if there's an outbreak in Wisconsin versus Indiana, and those 2 teams have to basically quarantine for 2 weeks, then games can be made up, schedules can be shifted around, because moving to this conference-only schedule is just trying to create as much flexibility and transparency as possible for these worst-case scenarios.
Which you'd think it'd be easier to do that, because in baseball they've had to do that with the teams, the Marlins and the Cardinals having the quarantine and having those games postponed and move around, and they have to play an absurd amount of games in the days they have left in the season. So you'd think it'd be a lot easier for college football, where they only play once a week, to be pretty flexible and just move a game here or there if, God forbid, an outbreak does happen on a team. So they do have an advantage there with that, at least, as compared to other sports.
I saw something, I think it was like 56 games in 55 days or something like that for the Marlins, or something crazy like that. But yeah.
They only have like one off day, and it's just an insane amount of baseball. But, I don't think they mind.
Yeah.
I think they're just happy to play, and I think that's the story for most athletes out there.
Yeah.
Just happy to be here. We're happy to be here. I'm happy to be here.
Absolutely.
In this little four-square bubble talking about sports finally.
Yeah,
Right.
something to have to talk about, where it's not just speculation. Now we're getting into it.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
September 4th can't hit soon enough. But Drew, what else you got?
Well, yeah, I mean, we're talking about these conference schedules, and something else that I find interesting. This is a big question sort of looming in the air, but a lot of these non-conference games, one, that were canceled. Several rivalry games are out the window for this year. Obviously, U of L UK is near and dear to my heart. But, I mean, even looking within the Big Ten, Iowa versus Iowa State, that one's not happening. And it's not as much of an issue of geography as more so trying to, bring these schedules, compact them and bring them together. But then that leads to the question, what do we do about bowl games? I mean, what happens if, Jackson, you mentioned that 10-win Indiana is still theoretically a possibility. But what happens if IU goes – I'm sorry, I can't keep a straight face. If IU –
We're all like,
and then makes a college football playoff that doesn't exist.
It would be so – I think you said earlier, it would be so Indiana for them to make the
– it would be on brand, 100%.
They don't have it. Just like they make the NCAA tournament the year it gets canceled.
Exactly, yeah.
But I don't know if they're –
So what about Ohio State then? If Ohio State goes undefeated, which is something they did last season.
Or even – because I feel like college football will do anything to save the playoff. I feel like if any bowl games get saved, it's going to be the playoff games. For me, the thing is, what if Indiana or Illinois qualify for a bowl, and it would have been like the Tax Slayer Bowl down in Jacksonville or the Pinstripe Bowl in New York? Florida's a hot spot. New York's not doing great. Do you still have a game there? Do you send those teams there? And to play teams that aren't in the Big Ten? Would they even consider cross-conference play at that point in the year when it's supposed to be worse? I mean, I don't know if we're going to – I doubt we're getting a full bowl schedule. Some bowls have already been canceled.
Right, yeah.
But, I mean, and they haven't even released the if the qualification is different, I don't think, unless it's still 6 games, which makes it so much harder.
Right. Because, I mean, looking at the IU schedule, I think 4 and 6 is reasonable. Like, look, that maybe a win over Illinois, Purdue, Maryland, and Rutgers. Those are 4 wins. Of course, when Michigan State's maybe up in the air, if they make a statement win against Penn State. But if we say 4 and 6 is at least like a respectable.
I agree with those numbers, Drew. 4 and 6 sounds good to me. And then I think we're going to get a better idea. If they win within the first few, that's going to change my mind. But as of now, I like your numbers.
Right. But then is that bowl eligible?
You know what they should do with that? They should just have the bowl game in Wyoming. Just a state that's not affected, have one giant bowl game, invite everybody out there and play, amongst the horses.
Yeah, no fans, just bring your best game. Let's see what we got. I like that idea a lot.
I think we're onto something, yeah.
Just throw them out on a ranch.
Throw them on a ranch.
Shift to South Dakota,
Honestly, and then as soon as you're done playing, you leave. Kind of like the NBA. Like as soon as you're out, you just get your ticket to Disney World and call it a day.
Yep.
Yeah.
But one thing I did want to bring up, or just quickly mention, Drew, you mentioned the rivalry games. Thank goodness we still get to play Purdue.
Yeah.
As a fan base, we still get to see that game versus Purdue. Thank goodness.
Yeah, I was going to bring that up. I'm so excited that, we get to finish out the season against Purdue. And downfall for Purdue, Rondell Moore yesterday just came out and said that he opted out of the season, which, that sucks that they're not going to be at full strength, but I'm just so happy we get to still play Purdue.
Yeah, I saw that. Rondell Moore opting out to focus on the 2021 draft. That's huge, Big Ten.
It's huge.
He's what, a top 5, top 3 wide receiver in the
Oh
country?
yeah,
And he's
Yeah,
officially done
for
with
sure.
college football.
Yeah.
Yeah.
After about a year and a half.
He's from Louisville, right?
I believe from the
I think he went to school with Romeo, or like he grew up with
Yeah.
Romeo.
It's around that area, but yeah, no, that is
Yeah.
huge
So
impact.
that's Southern Indiana then. Yeah.
Yeah.
Right.
Like
But
the New
yeah.
Albany area.
Yeah,
So I
Rondo Moore, incredible talent. I also want to point out, I saw this. He plans to graduate with his degree by December in 2.5 years. Like, kudos to him. That's insane.
Yeah.
Let's put
While
him
playing while being one of the top wide receivers in the country, he also knocked out a degree from Purdue in 2.5 years.
Yeah, that's impressive.
Like, yeah, full respect there. Now he's going to the NFL. Like,
If only he could work that way for all
he's
of
doing
us.
something right. Yeah.
like
Yeah. I want whatever he's got.
Right.
Literally. That's something in that New Albany water with Romeo and Rondell Moore.
it's about them New Albany kids.
Yeah.
But one thing I did want to ask about was, Drew, you mentioned the health of the team in a COVID sense, but kind of if Mike Penix can stay healthy in general, because that's been his issue. That was his issue last season, was he went down after the first game. If Penix can stay healthy and the rest of the team doesn't have any issues, what is, I guess, we mentioned 4 and 6, but what is the limit of this team with the schedule they've got, the roster they have, and I guess just the potential you guys see?
Well, I will say, speaking to Michael Penix this morning, he said like about his injuries, he doesn't like dwell on the past. He doesn't look at the past injuries that he's had, and something he's been focusing on this summer has been putting the right things in his body, eating healthier, and just preparing himself for the longevity of a 10-game season, especially in the Big Ten. But I think ceiling for this team for this season, I was looking at it earlier. I'm looking at it right now. I said anywhere from maybe 5 to 6, maybe 7 wins. It's a tough schedule. It's so tough.
So your absolute best case is 7 wins.
I mean, yeah, as rough as that sounds, I mean, 7 wins out of a 10-game season, though. That'd
be
bad.
incredible. Yeah,
Yeah, that'd be
especially
incredible.
with the schedule they've got.
Yeah. I mean, but yeah, I would say probably on the lower end of that, maybe 5, maybe 6, but yeah, top 7 probably.
And then Haley, what do you see as the absolute ceiling, best case scenario? Everything goes right for this Indiana football team.
I'm a happy person. I'm optimistic, but I'm also, I'm going to say 6. I'm going to say 6 for now. But like I said earlier, that could change given if they win any of their first 3 or 4 games. Then I could be adjusting my guess. But we're going to go with 6 for now.
Okay, you just need some convincing to be confident in this team.
Yeah.
Yes. I don't want to put all my eggs in their basket yet. I want to see where to distribute my eggs to. So we just got to hold on.
Smart. And then I guess, is there, and this is kind of just open-ended, but is there any one player, couple players you think will be, if they hit the ceilings you set, which players will be the ones to get them there? Wow.
This fan. Oh, sorry. Didn't mean to cut you off.
No, you're fine.
So sorry. With Zoom, I'm just cutting people off like a knife. I'm so sorry.
It's so easy to cut people off on Zoom.
Right? Well, this is a perfect time, Jackson, to mention Coach Allen's list that he had. In the press conference the other day, people were asking him, who are the guys that you're expecting the most out of? And to all of our surprise, he goes, I have a list. He goes, I wrote these down. And we're all just kind of like, really? Okay, well, let's tell us more, And on that list, he said wide receiver Myles Marshall is going to be one that he's really expecting a lot out of, just because he made 3 timely catches during the Purdue game, and Allen wants more of that energy this season. He mentioned Caleb Jones on offensive tackle, started last year, but he wants him to take over more of the leadership role. Also mentioned Harry Kreider, obviously Penix for his leadership abilities, and then a couple other names he threw out were Cam Jones, Reese Taylor, and Jalen Williams. But the name I keep hearing over and over is Myles Marshall, and of course WAP is always on the list too.
Yeah,
I'll take the easy. I think in order for IU to succeed, the combination of Mike and WAP just has to be through the roof. Wap touched on it this morning. He said they're both from Tampa. You know, they're always together. He kept saying over and over again, that's my family, that's my brother. I just think that in order for IU to be super successful, especially on the offensive end, obviously that Wap and Mike need to have the connection that they shown last year whenever Mike was healthy.
Right.
Yeah, I think one of the biggest things with this team, because I have full confidence in the Penix Fillier combo. I think that's going to work wonders. I think it's going to work well, and we've seen it proof of it working in the past. I think a lot of it's going to come down to the defense, and last season we saw Taiwan Mullen take a huge step forward. Well, I guess it was his initial step as a true freshman. Yeah, and he was able to lock down some top receivers. The problem was IU never had the rest of that defense fully flushed out. And against a team like Ohio State, who had 3-4 receivers who could burn you, there's only so much that Taiwan Mullen can do. So I think if IU is able to develop the rest of the cornerbacks and the safeties, sort of going back to what I was saying earlier, I think there's very few teams now that IU is just purely outmatched against, which has been an issue before. I mean, if we look at the absolute peak of the schedule, the only game that I don't see as being a team that the IU is really going to beat is Ohio State. And after that, I'm not going to say 9-1 because I don't think IU making it 9-1, but I think IU can maybe pull out one upset out of Penn State, Minnesota, or Michigan. Mm-hmm. I don't know which one, or I guess throw Wisconsin in there too. I think IU can upset any of those four.
If that Minnesota game, I think this is maybe an easy question, but if that Minnesota game was at home, do you think do you think are you looking at it differently? Considering the whole fans aspect, are you looking at that game a little differently if it's at home?
Well, I think under a normal circumstance I would, but I guess to respond with another question, how much do you think home field advantage is going to matter this season?
Yes. Sorry, I got really excited there. But yes, okay. Just so you guys know, for tickets, IU is officially announcing their ticket plan in mid-August, so really coming up in the next couple of weeks. Everybody has to wear face coverings, and there's an expectation of reduced capacity. Drew, I'm so glad you said that because you were in my brain. Because if you're away and there's only half capacity and you just is it really a big deal anymore if it's home or away? That's such a good point you have, because if you're at home, it's going to be the same amount of people as what it is going to be if you're away, even though there's going to be more fans from that home team's town, that home team's college. It's not going to be as loud, that's for sure.
So if they're taking, let's just say they take half capacity, 50%, are they taking 50% from what would be a sold out crowd, or are they taking 50% of what the average would be for an IU game? Because 50% of a game in Bloomington is a lot different than 50% of a game, let's say, at Penn State.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
So my question would be what is is it out of the whole entire arena or stadium, or what is it?
I feel like it would just be of the capacity, and I think Memorial holds around 50,000, 52,000 fans on a full day. So I feel like you throw in 50% there. But a good example that I've seen is Florida State. They're going to allow, I think they said it was a moving scale of 20 to 25% of fans.
Okay.
And Doak Campbell Stadium down there fits 70,000. So only 20,000 more, and they're only allowing 20%. So who knows what that could mean for IU. And then I remember earlier in the very beginning of this, Ohio State's AD thought they could fit 30,000 fans in the first year. So, I guess it's just going to come down to the school and just the local health departments and the local governments coming up with safety guidelines. But I don't know what attendance could look like for IU with the numbers, at least. But if there are fans, Drew, to answer your question about home field advantage, I think even with or without them, I think it does make a difference because you've traveled all that way. Yeah. So you're going to Minnesota. You're in Minnesota. I feel like it does make a difference being there rather than if you are in Indiana, you've got your home backdrop. You've got your graphics playing on the Jumbotron. if they pipe in crowd noise, you've got your crowd noise.
That's
Yeah,
true.
I mean, it's still like your stadium. So like, I mean, like everyone knows if you're a Hoosier, you know you want to play in Bloomington.
Right. I feel like it's more at this point with or without fans or even reduced capacity. It's just going to be you're comfortable at home.
Yeah.
And that's what makes a big difference at places.
Yeah, that is a good point of just having that atmosphere. I mean, even with or without fans. I mean, you look at teams in the past. I mean, there's been some games in some years where IU didn't really have a huge home support, like anyways, in terms of just like fans who were coming in. And I remember talking to players last season who said they liked being on the road just as much because they got that confidence boost, not from hearing the crowd cheer for them, but from hearing the opposing crowd just shut up. They said like the other crowd went quiet. That was even more of a confidence boost for them. So maybe having that, I mean, when you're in Ohio State Stadium, of course, you're in Columbus. But at the same time, I mean, there could be players who respond better to that of knowing, hey, there's only like 20% of the fans here. This is not the real Ohio State atmosphere.
Right.
Yeah. But also, I guess Ohio State could just be like, yeah, you're still in the horseshoe. It's still intimidating, but it's not.
Oh, yes, I'm sure it
It's not
is.
the same without 100,000 fans.
Right.
That is an exception to the comfortable at home thing because when you've got 100,000 fans week in and week out, it's going to be different. It's going to be weird. Same goes for teams like Michigan and Alabama.
Yeah, I agree.
We get those motion graphics where it looks like people are sitting in the stands going like this. The NBA, those are awesome when the NBA has those. And I think, aren't those actually live? They're people at home watching? Yeah, that'd be really cool.
It's funny because like the other day and like on the Lakers played, they played somebody and like Lil Wayne was in the stand. Like it's just like anybody could be there, and he was just sitting next to some like random fan, and it was just pretty cool to see.
I remember the Pacers. They had the woman from The Last Dance who was Michael Jordan on the sideline.
Yeah.
They had her in the crowd.
Yeah,
and that was the best thing I had seen. But yeah, I kind of hope they have cutouts in the stands of fans.
That's what I was just thinking.
Like
too.
baseball?
I would love to just like we could just try and like rent out an IUSTV section.
every single one of us get one. That'd be cool.
Because the amount of weird things, and Drew, we talked about it with Trisha on the baseball episode, is the amount of weird things you can do with those that people are getting away with.
Didn't Trisha put like her dog?
Yeah, Trisha has her dog.
Yeah.
There's a fan in Chicago who bought 100 cutouts of himself. So there are 100. There are 100 of him in the stadium. It's really weird, and I kind of want to do that. Just have like 50 Jacksons in the
all with different expressions.
Oh my gosh! Send different photos.
Yes,
one of
that'd
them
be hilarious.
Or yeah, it'd be fun.
There's one I hire somebody to be in the stadium to just do different ones depending on what happens on the play. Like they turn it over, put up the sad Jackson.
The man behind the cutout.
Yeah.
Oh
my God. Drew. What else you got?
I mean, at this point, what do you all think? It's such a vague question, but like, what do you all think for the season as a whole? I mean, do you think for the fans coming back, I mean, whether they're in the stadium or not, do you think that having these sort of dimmed, duller atmospheres is going to take some of the wind out of it, especially if some big teams end up getting infected? Do you think it's going to sort of put a damper on the season as a whole? Or do you think at this point, like, sports are back, we're just going to run with it?
So are you asking, like, if one team gets, like, if someone gets infected on a certain team, if they can't, if that team can't play anymore?
Like, hypothetically speaking, if, like, Iowa and Nebraska have to – I don't know why I picked, like, the two most rural teams. But if those two teams have to, like, shut down for a few weeks, and then, you know, maybe by the end of the season, like, some games have been moved around, rescheduled, it becomes chaotic. Or like if a couple have to like finish with less games, maybe it happens near the end of the season. Do you think looking at like a 6-3 Iowa team and like a 4-5 Minnesota team is going to just put like a large like blur on the season.
I think at this point, people are just excited to be there and to watch. I know I am. It's not the same. It's not the same as going to a sold out stadium or hearing the noise, but it's something. And I think if you ask the athletes that, they would say the same thing. WAP today said, I'm happy, I'm happy, I'm happy, I'm happy. He said it probably Jevan, like 4 or 5 times in a row.
Yeah.
And he said he felt like in quarantine he was a Tasmanian devil with his just spinning around in a box. That's what he felt like. And so you get all these guys with all this energy out here, and I just think they're grateful. And I know fans are probably grateful for the same thing. Yeah, it's going to look different. It's not going to be as fun, but it's something.
That just to like piggyback on that, like everyone knows that this season is going to be different. So what's one more little different thing about it? You know what I mean? Like let's say one team can't compete for a week or two. It's different anyway. So like let's just take it for what it is. Football will be back hopefully. So let's just take it for that and let the players play.
Yeah.
I feel like that's a great point because you can see it in the other sports that we've mentioned, and it's just like it's gonna be weird. Let it be weird. Yeah. Just take the weird and run with it.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah. I guess that's really all you can do at this point. I don't know if anyone has anything else they feel like I've missed, but yeah, I mean, we're all happy to have football back.
Yeah, I'm just excited to get back to campus and hopefully get to cover the season.
Yeah.
I don't want to have a discussion about it, but I just find it weird. And you said it too, Drew. But Indiana can go to New Jersey and play Rutgers, but they can't play Ball State. Okay. Sure.
Just leave it at that. Just leave it at that.
It's weird. The schedule's weird.
Again, going back to the ACC for some reason, but you've got Boston College and Florida State in the same conference who will make stops against, in Indiana with Notre Dame. You can go to the Carolinas. You can hit, Clemson and UNC. You can just travel all across, like, the East Coast. I mean, everything east of Chicago, basically, is the ACC.
Mm-hmm.
The ACC.
But Florida State won't be happening this year. But Florida State, Boston College will
be. Yeah.
What a weird sentence.
It's weird.
You're right. It is weird. And like I said, go with the weird. But sometimes it's just like, come on, man. You couldn't have at least played the interstate rivalries.
Yeah.
Which is where Indiana gets lucky that their interstate rival is in the same conference.
Yes.
I'll take that. Be happy with that. And I guess that's all I got. That's all I have left.
And not only in the conference, but one of the projected wins.
We can only hope. Winning in at least my senior year against Purdue.
That's true. All right. Yeah. On that note, I think that wraps up our show. But, of course, as we said, it's great to have football back. We'll look forward, Jevan and Haley, to seeing all of your coverage this fall in whatever capacity the team is able to play and whatever access we're able to get. But, obviously, sports are back. We're here to talk about it, and we'll continue to be here to talk about it. So thank you, everyone else, for watching. Thank you, everyone, for being here. That does it for this week's episode. We will, of course, be back with more sports coverage. I'm Drew Fry for Haley Jordan, Jevan McCoskey, and Jackson Kinney, and thanks for watching.